See, what makes her character real is some take, something that you put in there.
Yes, I know you had a woman who was holding her locket and she was talking to you and you put it in a book. I did my research clearly.
Shit, okay, you're scary now.
When you first started and with this book, you got rejected terribly. You know, you got rejected by publishers. You felt that this book is amazing, it needs to be out there. But the world was saying no. What kept you going?
Bravery is the other side of stupidity. You can only know whether you've been stupid or brave in hindsight. If you're successful, you've been brave. If you're a failure, well, you were stupid. For me, particularly with regard to my books, because as compared to everything else, I've said it often, I come from a very humble background. My parents were educated in the Hindi medium. We were the first generation to be educated in English. We were sent to top grade schools. My friends had shoes which cost more than my father's salary. Obviously, if you've grown up in that, you have this fire in the belly and a bit of a chip on the shoulder that I have to earn this. I have to succeed. All my career choices were always rational, logical, and pragmatic. I made pragmatic choices. BSc Maths, MBA from IIM Calcutta, banking for 14 years. My books was the only thing in my career which was not rational, logical, pragmatic. I was genuinely just writing for myself. I didn't really think where it would go. I was only writing for my family. They had no choice. They had to read. I've never been creative. Most of my school and college friends, whenever they meet me, I just had a reunion recently. Most of them ask, "Sach bata, actually किसने लिखा है?" This was the first creative thing I ever did, and it just comes to me as visions.
But all the other books after that, the first book sometimes does sort of just come to you. It does because it's a culmination of everything you've been through. But what about the subsequent books?
All subsequent.
All of them came to you.
I don't make plans. I don't make a story summary. Those who've read all my books would know that the Ramchandra series is actually a 1500-year prequel to the events of the Shiva trilogy, right? There are clues I left in the Oath of the Vayuputras, like for example the description of the city of Ujjain, which was tied up in the War of Lanka, which released 2 years back in a different series. There is no way I could have planned this. It just comes to me, and somehow things just tie together. How it does that, I don't know.
I know. It's those cream biscuits. You eat cream biscuits while you write. It's the cream biscuits, the
That
sugar that
research.
does it. Yeah.
Sugar high.
And I know what flavor. I think it's pineapple flavor also.
Can't you
Pineapple. So if you ever have a writer's block, pineapple flavored cream biscuits.
You know, many of my readers actually come at Litfest. They come with cream biscuits for me. ये खाओ और जल्दी लिखो. Because
So you can't give young writers here any tips. What tips are you going to give them?
I'm telling you, follow your instincts. Okay, let me put it to you differently. You know, in the ancient Indian way and in the ancient pagan Greek way as well. The Greeks, I'm sure you're aware, were also pagans, right? The Greeks used to believe that the goddess which would bless them with creativity was the muse. And the belief was your job as an artist is to help the goddess to help you. And so what should you do as an artist? Practice your craft. So if you're a painter, keep practicing. The inspiration will come. If you're a writer, don't waste time on your Instagram feed. Be on your laptop and at least attempt to write. The goddess may be busy at that time. She may help someone else. She'll come back to you the next day. But you have to do your job.
I think there's one more thing. I think you have to be disciplined. You have to sit at your desk every day at that point. So even if the muse is on her way to someone else, you grab her and you drag her carcass onto your desk.
And
That's what you do.
that is helping
You
your
just have
goddess to help.
Yeah, you have
Right?
to turn up
Yeah.
every day and then she will turn up when she has to.
That is helping your goddess to help you.
The other thing about the muse, I think, what's interesting is you're not taking responsibility for your success, your failure, your inability that day to write. You blame it on this person. As long as you turn up, you've done your job. Whether you've done a great job or not, now that's the muse's fault. And I think that way, most creative people stay sane because it's a frightening job. I mean, a doctor has a manual, even a dancer. She'll give a great performance. She knows it'll never be the same again. And that can drive you mad, which is why a lot of artists go mad. But if you blame the muse, you'll stay sane. That's what I'd like to use her for. And I do. When we are writing, I don't know if it's true for you, But when I'm writing, suddenly I feel I'm writing from a higher sort of consciousness. I have more empathy, I have less judgment. Maybe as a human being sitting here, I'm a lot more judgmental. But when I'm at my desk, I'm a greater person. Does that happen to you?
Yeah. Like for Ravan, enemy of Aryavarta, I'm writing of Ravan, right? And I have to feel his thoughts, feel his emotions, and not just shut it down. Arey yaar, ye kya bakwas hota hai? I have to give it respect and actually write it down. And in a way, then you end up understanding where every character is coming from. But if you read my Ravan, enemy of Aryavarta, he's not shown as some monstrous villain. And of course, he has his bad parts. But I've actually written down where he comes from. Why did he become Ravan? And one can only write that if, when you're writing, when he comes in front of you, you don't judge him. You don't say, ye kya bakwas hai, right? You actually have to see him with an open mind, hear his thoughts, feel his emotions, and write it down the way it comes to you. So, you cannot be a good writer if you start getting judgmental. And in a way, I think at least then writing can help you become a better person.
I think so.
You learn from so many different people.
I mean, there are some horrible writers, terrible men. We know about them. They've been cancelled. But yeah, more or less, I think that maybe you carry some of that empathy from your writing world into the real world. So I think
I don't know how it works for you, because every person I meet, I'm always observing. I'm always trying to absorb. See, what makes a character real is something that you put in there.
yes, I know you had a woman who was holding her locket and she was talking to you and you put it in a book. I did my research clearly.
Okay, you're scary now.
Tell me about your process. Tell me how you start, what you do, what is your current process, and how do you start writing a novel?
No outline. Certainly not a 3-act structure. 3-act structure actually comes from the Western paradigm, originally from Aristotle's Poetics, as you know.
Tell me more about that. I'm fascinated. Explain that.
So the Indian storytelling style is actually more like the only way to describe it is like a hypertext story telling style, right? So if you see the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, there is one arc running all the way from the beginning to the end. Pop quiz, how does the Mahabharata start? Awesome. What's her name?
My name is Sayan.
Sayan. Applause for Sayan. He's absolutely right. Okay. Yeah. So it starts with the Yajna. And actually before that, there's actually a story within a story within a story. And Janmajaya is doing the Yajna. Right? And then he is confronted with a moral conundrum. And then the priest starts explaining what the story of the Mahabharata is. Then it goes deeper. So if you think about it, there are actually various layers, right, within a storytelling style. Doesn't fit the exact 3-act structure. The second thing is a traditional 3-act structure always has a sense of conclusion at the end. Even Bollywood movies are actually usually in that structure. Mahabharata, how does that end? Not the television serial. That also happens, but how does it end? Absolute end.
He shoots Krishna Bhagwan's thumb.
What's your name? Badri, you're right. The 5 Pandavas and Draupadi and a dog go all the way up to Swargalok. And all the Pandavas one by one start falling, Draupadi as well. The only one who reaches at the end is who? And the dog. And the dog is symbolic, it's very symbolic. And when they enter Swargalok, who do they see out there? Right, they see Duryodhana out there. Now I remember the first time I had heard this, I had heard this from, and I didn't hear the full Mahabharata together. We used to hear different parts of it. And my grandfather, he was a Pandit. I said, what sense does this make? I mean, the entire battle, it was a Dharma Yudh. And Duryodhan was Adharma. And Yudhishthir was Dharma. What is Duryodhan doing in heaven? What is going on? And my grandfather told me the wisest thing I ever heard. That is what you're supposed to figure out. Why is Duryodhan out there? Okay. And that, if you realize, is the Indian storytelling style. At the end of an Indian story, the way it's supposed to be, you are not supposed to have a sense of conclusion. It's supposed to leave you troubled. Why the hell did this happen? Life is that way, right? Because through that, because
Life, there's a definite conclusion. You die. That's it.
And in the Western way, death is the end of it. In the Indian way, not really, right? Not really.
You come back as a mosquito.
Yeah, it could be. It depends
I
on
think
your
too many
karma.
people have come
It-
back as mosquitoes. That's why we are all the
it-
time with
It depends on your karma. I'm not commenting. But what happens is if you have an end that doesn't give you a sense of conclusion, then you do what the story intended for you to do. Learn philosophies and apply that in your own life. So it's not actually a 3-act structure. You realize the entire purpose of the story is to learn some philosophies. Okay, which some may make sense to you, some may not. That's up to you, your journey. There's no one philosophy that
Who do you think is the most powerful god in our pantheon?
every person has their own favorite powerful god. So you have a right to your god or goddess or your religion. For me, it is the Mahadev. Har Har Mahadev.
So if you had a chance to be a god for a day, you would choose to be? If you had a choice, one day, I know
Those
who
of
I
us-
would be.
Who?
I've already said it. I'd be Kali Ma with my tongue sticking out at the world. It already is.
Kali Ma is extremely powerful.
I know.
That's a very powerful
Why haven't you
choice.
figured that
That's
out?
a very powerful choice.
I'm sitting here battling you. So who would you be?
Yeah, actually, in the traditional Indian way, all of us are gods. Yeah.
Okay.
Namaste means I bow to the divine.
This is the Rajshri answer.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
doesn't want to get into any trouble.
How does one actually market their book, especially when there's so much noise and clutter today?
I think a perfect role model to follow is actually Amir Khan. I don't know him personally, to be honest, but I had seen an interview of his. And if I remember correctly, I'm paraphrasing probably, but he had said that a good artist must be almost a schizophrenic, right? That when you're creating your product, your art, be completely true to it. Care a damn about anyone else, right? And go with conviction. Go with what feels right to you. But once that is done, then you have to become practical and pragmatic. No compromise on the product, right? But figure out, okay, how do I position this? How do I market it? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities at this point of time? You have to somehow keep trying new ideas. Doing things of the old are not going to work. For Immortals of Melua, I'd self-published my first book. So I distributed, the first chapter free of cost at Crossword. So I'd landed up in a suit, okay? I'm talking about 2010. They didn't have authors coming in suits, man. Okay, and I'd landed up with a PowerPoint presentation and a sample of the first chapter with the same cover as the first book, right? And I'd said, I'm giving this sample chapter to you free of cost. What is your problem? Just display it at your cash counter. I don't know why. They just said yes. Maybe because no one had ever asked that before. Okay. And remember 2010, no smartphones. So at the cash counter, you are actually, it's a serious customer because he's come to build something. He's not just browsing. He or she is not just browsing, right? And there's that magical, at that time, 25-30 seconds when the customer has no idea what to do, when the bill is being generated. He sees this booklet, nice cover, big, free, written on top. He picks it up. Oh, why not? And then many of them went home, read it, and they came back to Crossword asking, hey, where's the entire book? We released the first chapter 1 week before the launch of the book. The response from the first chapter itself was so strong that Crossword increased their order before the launch of the book. And we hit the bestseller charts in the first week. But this was a good idea at that point of time. If you go now to Crossword, they'll ask you for advertising money.
Yes,
Correct?
know.
Yeah.
I've met you before at our college last year when you came for the Plot Malhar event.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, at that time I was reading The Immortals of Meluha.
All right.
By this time I've completed the trilogy and I am in absolute awe. I could not read anything else for the next week.
Thank you.
As you said, I was just thinking, why did it happen the way it happened? I won't ask the exact question. I mean, people here haven't read the third book. But I genuinely want to ask you, why did you do that to her? If you get the reference.
I couldn't do anything for 2 days when I wrote that scene. I finished that scene and I came back and just told my wife, I just said she's dead, and I was just crying. The way it is in the Indian way, in any case, death is not, it's such a big thing. It's not actually, right? And often for, the Japanese samurai used to pray for a good death. A good death brings meaning to your life. And perhaps the thing to think about in the character of Sati is, what do you think were her strengths? What do you think were her weaknesses? What do you think led to her death? How do you think she was with her followers? Her as an individual, what a magnificent individual. And there are sometimes those who are great warriors and great leaders, sometimes great leaders and great warriors are not necessarily the same. Think of these philosophies, and then you might think about what kind of leader you want to be.
You are a troll slayer, so don't tell me that you don't do Vivad. I have seen some of your tweets.